Hi everybody, welcome to Season 5 of Educator Yarns. My name is Jess Staines. I'm the Director of the Koori curriculum, which is an Aboriginal early childhood consultancy that's based on Dark and Young Country on the New South Wales Central Coast. We offer professional development for early childhood educators through webinars, retreats, events and in-services. This time round on Season 5 of Educator Yarns, I'll be joined by Bec Burch, who's the founder of Bush Kindy Australia, which is a program that supports educators in enriching opportunities for play and learning in nature for children. Bec has an extensive background in early childhood education. She leads Bush Kindy Australia, where they take children into nature spaces in all weather, and it gives them the opportunity to play and learn. Bec has experience that spans over many years regarding training and mentoring in nature play, and she's worked in Nature Play Queensland, TAFE New South Wales, and as well previously Cottonwood Learning. So welcome everyone to Season 5 of Educator Yarns, where we'll be mainly focusing on the intersection of nature play and Aboriginal culture and giving advice and hopefully some pearls of wisdom for early childhood educators who are wanting to delve deeper into Aboriginal programs and explore opportunities for rich and meaningful nature play experiences. Before we get into the episode today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered on and pay my respects to elders both past and present, as well as acknowledging any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander educators who are tuning in. Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Educator Yarns. I'm here today with Bec Burch from Bush Kindy Australia, and we are going to be talking about the 7 R's of sustainability, which is rethink, refuse, reduce, reuse, repair, regift, and recycle. Try remembering that and saying it 7 times fast, right? Welcome back, Bec.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought we jump in and maybe we just go through each of those R's of sustainability. And I guess the connection here is that when we're thinking about sustainable practices, in my mind, it's how we're teaching children to be custodians of the land on which we're working, learning and playing on every day with them. And so, and respecting that it is Aboriginal land. And so I feel that that's where that connection comes from for me. The first thing that came to mind for me when I was thinking about rethinking as one of the 7 R's of sustainability is getting educators to rethink maybe some of the practices that they have within their environment that are not sustainable, such as their collage trolley. And one of the things that we often pose educators to critically reflect on is, are they taking, making and wasting, or are they borrowing, using and returning? So is their collage trolley full of pipe cleaners and pom-poms and cellophane and crepe paper? Or is it recycled milk bottle lids and teared up cereal boxes, collected leaves and barks and gum nuts and so forth? And being mindful of how we're using even those natural materials. So if we are getting a gum nut and rolling it around in some glue and glitter, we're not then able to return it to country without making country sick. So really thinking critically about some of those practices that potentially have just been embedded in our program for a really long time.
Absolutely. And I think, natureplay.org really asks us to look about how our actions affect the environment. And so there's so many ways to kind of rethink the way we do things. And, the art space, you just talked about the collage trolley, there's lots of opportunities to reuse, like some of the trees might drop a whole lot of yellow flowers. Have we thought about like putting them in a mortar and pestle, grinding them up and seeing if they make yellow paint? One of our yellow flowers, when you actually grind it up, actually makes more like a pink orange paint. I know lots of our services go out into Bush Kindy programs and they're out in the community. And council can only do so much. And we find that in most of these sites, there's actually weeds on them. And so if we've taken the time to kind of understand and have that knowledge of what are weeds and what are natives, we can pick some of those weeds and actually make great paint really simply. Just, grinding them up in the mortar and pestle. Children love that sensory experience, adding a bit of water, and you can paint them, whether you're painting it on leaves or mud, water, it's just, I guess, tapping in to the knowledge and information about the plants that where they're not toxic and they are weeds before we're touching them. But I guess that's that rethinking too, even in our own spaces. If we were going to build a shelter, thinking about, can we use the branches that have already fallen on the ground rather than cutting down live plants? Rethinking about we might have a gardener or maintenance person within our program, and on the weekend they might come in and, collect all the sticks and take them away or mulch them, prune trees, or get the leaf blower out and blow all the leaves away. Can we rethink those practices? Do they need to be blown away? Can we use those leaves for play and learning? They're already on the ground. The pile of sticks that they're collecting and taking somewhere or dumping or mulching, can we use those in play and learning? They've already fallen in our play space. So it's just about rethinking some of those actions that we're doing in our everyday practices, and how does that affect our environment?
And I feel like these are all connected, these 7 R's, because then if we look at the next one, which is refusing, I think it's in a way sometimes rethinking even some of our procurement practices and refusing to buy from places like Temu or Shein, or, not getting plastic straws or single-use plastic bags. So we're refusing those things, but we're also rethinking some of our practices, because when we're thinking about or talking about sustainability, we're not just talking about environmental sustainability, we're also speaking about social and economic sustainability. And again, I think you explained this really well in our workshop, Bec, how it's like when we're being mindful about environmental decisions, but also making sure that doesn't negatively impact the social and the economic things. You could probably explain this better than me.
Yeah, I guess we have to juggle all three of those things. And that's where those new dimensions have come into the definition of sustainability in line with the new EYLF principle. We've gone away from just that focus on just environment, but also looking at that social sustainability and how that addresses issues of like social justice and equity. And also, the economic side of equitable access to resources and conserving resources is a really important one.
Yeah. So that's part of that refusing, because I sort of think that we can go to a shop. I'm not going to name because I'm so paranoid about like defamation, but and we could buy a $2 t-shirt, but then there's a person at the end of that $2 t-shirt that's made it, and how much are they being paid to make a $2 t-shirt? There's a social consequence, I think. And that's that social justice part.
And we have the opportunity to refuse some of these things. We can go to the catalogue and order a whole lot of like mini loose parts or even nature items from a catalogue. And again, I want us to kind of think about, where are they coming from? Where's the source from? And what's the labour involved? But we also often just have nature's gifts in our yard ready to go. Like, there are leaves on the ground. One of the challenges I always do in our training is like, we have an activity with leaves, and I'm like, how could we use these leaves for play and learning? The great example in the home corner is they have a bunch of leaves and they can be money rather than laminated or plastic coins. But those leaves could then also later on be the cheese, lettuce, and hamburger, or, sushi or spaghetti. So it can be used for the pretend food. The thing about leaves and all of the natural materials is they're so open-ended. They can be used for so many different things. So, when we do buy a plastic sushi from, a catalogue or a shop, it's always just going to be plastic sushi. But if we're using some natural resources, we can borrow them from nature. They can be all sorts of things and used in a very open-ended way that really supports that child-led practice, which is part of nature pedagogy. And then, we can return them back. And it might not be leaves, it could be the seed pods. But for most of us, we have lots of that in our playground space that's already fallen on the ground, unless our maintenance person has come along and leaf blown it all away or put it in the mulcher and whatnot.
Yep. What comes to mind for you when you hear, reduce?
I so much.
Consumption? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of consumption, a lot of commercial consumption that isn't always necessary. And I think one of the insights that I see educators coming back, and it's really beautiful, it's like a light bulb moment, when they start their Bush Kindy journey, they'll actually go, we went out and we didn't actually take anything but a few books, and the children were so engaged in the space. Like they realized that they didn't need to have so much stuff, so many materials. And I know we're all fortunate that we have some, amazing budgets and can fit out our rooms in with beautiful materials and resources to support learning. And that is important. But we can think about how can we provide that balance and not just keep buying for the sake of buying and keep filling our storerooms and every shelf, but like, can we, just minimize all of that purchasing? Because every time we purchase stuff, then there's this old stuff that then we're like, oh, let's get rid of that. And then there's more waste. So, can we actually, and nature's a perfect example, can we use nature as a way to not have to keep buying more commercial things?
And I think it's also like being more mindful about the types of resources you are procuring in the first place. Like, are they open-ended? Can they be used for multiple purposes, that they're not just this one function and then that's it? And I kind of feel like, I don't know, I keep on jumping around because I think they're all, you can sort of see how that's connected to rethinking. And like the other part of refusing, I know I shouldn't keep going backwards, but refusing for me, really thinking about it as well, is about, again, where you're buying your resources from. And if I'm thinking about cultural resources, that you're privileging Aboriginal owned businesses and you're refusing to buy from big companies and organisations that are not remunerating Aboriginal peoples equitably for their work. And so you're making sure that you're looking to see, are they part of the Aboriginal Arts Association or part of the Indigenous Code? So you're knowing that you're buying somewhere that's ethical, and you're refusing to, just because something's cheaper, maybe, it doesn't mean that it's ethical and it's not hurting and the Aboriginal community, so why are you wanting to do those things in the first place?
I think there's great opportunities in our community if we take a moment to kind of step out of our centres. I often do see them around, it might be NAIDOC week, where there'll be a community event, but there'll be market stalls, and you can tap into our local community members and buy local resources. It might be stories. I recently bought a beautiful local game with some stones and got to spend time with that elder to chat about where this originated from and why she was sharing this. So yeah, I think tapping into what's in your community and getting local place-based resources that have meaning relevant is really important, and refusing some of those products that are available on our websites or catalogs of where are they coming from.
Yeah. And I think that also then leads into that idea of reusing. And I know you've talked about like reusing nature in lots of different ways. And the story that you just shared about buying the stone game from a local Aboriginal artist, I recently bought a button necklace from a local Aboriginal markets in Canberra. And to me, it was about repurposing and reusing something that was otherwise going to be thrown away. And it was beautiful, like the way that they had been arranged and put together. I think we reuse things a lot. Like, things don't have to be brand new. I think going and buying resources from op shops and Vinnies and Salvos, I think those are great things to do. Looking at, old drawers. I was at a service yesterday at Meadowbank TAFE Children's Centre, and as I walked into the service, they had used drawers from an old resource cupboard that was going to be thrown away as planter boxes as garden beds. And I love that, like not going out and buying pots, from Bunnings, but just using what you've already got. My daughter goes to OT, and one of her favorite, pieces of equipment at OT is a big, huge tire swing. It doesn't have to be these, hammock hoop swings. That we can make things ourselves and repurpose and reuse what we already have available to us. One of the cultural sort of things that comes to mind for me, as well as like the work of the ghost net weavers from Pumpora Arts Centre in Queensland, who are actively going out and rescuing these discarded fishing nets and repurposing and reusing them, turning them into beautiful sculptural pieces of art. They're in lots of museums, like they're at the Sydney Maritime Museum. I was just at the National Museum in Canberra, and they've actually got these ghost net weaves as part of the children's play space that they can touch and feel and crawl on. And my son loves it. He loved it when he was a baby. We took him through the Maritime Museum, and it's so textural. It's great for children. But I thought, what a great story, and for children to also be able to watch some of these videos of how that's, like these nets and the consequences of pollution in the ocean and what they can do about it. And that's social justice too. I think there's so much we can do with that reusing. Hi everyone, I'm just jumping in quickly to remind you all that Bec and I have a series of upcoming events and workshops all throughout Queensland, where we'll be yarning about the new ELF principles, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, and sustainability. We'll be in Toowoomba, Cairns, the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Mackay, Townsville, you name it, we'll be there, and we hope to see you all there. All right, take care everyone, enjoy the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and again, they all do interweave, all these 7Rs. But I do find nature, those open-ended resources, it's what we call has a high play affordance. There's so many things that you can do with it. Those nature's loose parts don't have a particular defined use. So a log, for example, might just be a balancing beam that children are walking on one day. The next day, it might become the train. And the next day, it might become a pirate ship. Like, it's one thing that children can actually reuse it and repurpose in so many different ways in their play and learning. And it really ties in with that child-led learning and their own initiations. And so, yeah, whether it's a small leaf or a big log, just think we can support children to reuse things in nature as well as the recycled things.
Repair is the next one. And I have to say, this is the one that I am not very good at all. I don't have skills back. I've got no skills at all. But I do think it's something that definitely needs to be improved. Like whether it's, and I feel like a lot of like skills have been lost, like knowing how to sew on a button. I think that is, a skill, like a basic skill that everybody should know. And I don't know that. Like, I don't know how to sew on a button. It's terrible, right? But I feel like I could definitely see why it's one of the 7Rs of sustainability. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we all can be everything. But I think it's about tapping into our community. The men's shed, for example, are amazing groups of people in pretty much every community. And I've worked quite closely with a couple of ours in our local areas. And when I was chatting to the gentleman a few months back, he was just like, our number one priority is actually well-being. It's actually about men's mental health and connecting people and conversation. But he goes, the way we do that is by repairing and fixing things or creating and building new things. And he goes, that's a byproduct. But from the external, as a community member, we kind of go, let's go to the men's shed to get things repaired or rebuilt. But they are the most amazing group of people, because what they do is find things or get things donated that are broken. They'll either repair it for you at a minimal cost or sometimes no cost. If they're creating something new, they'll use all old repurposed wood, so it's all recycled. So we've had like possum boxes and bird boxes built. We've had tool stands for sawing built by them as well. And so, I don't think we all have to have that skill set. It's about who's in our community. And it might not be that. I've seen other services that have had a granddad that just comes and visits every Friday and just has a little tinker spot where they are, fixing things with the children in their spaces. One of the services down the road has a tinker corner. So there's just constantly recycled wood planks, all sorts of screws where children can just rebuild, repair things. It's a static point of the service program.
That's great. Have you heard of that show Bush Mechanics?
Yes.
You watched it?
Yes.
So it's like bombed out cars in the middle of nowhere, that mob come and grab and turn into, repair and repurpose and reuse and turn them into all sorts of different things. And I'm pretty sure you can watch it on ABC iView. Anyway, but if not, Google bush mechanics, because that's what comes to mind when I think of repairing and reusing and repurposing as well. It's all part of it.
I think that one's a really good one to really share that value with children, that we can repair things, because we are in a bit of a society that it's a like quick use and throw out, where we are in a throw out society. And so showing children that, you know, if something does break, we can actually potentially fix that or get it repaired, or, you know, pull it apart and use it for something different. So I think that's a really good message we actually need to share with children, be doing that with children.
Yep. Yep. The next one is regift. And this is something that we've been doing this week. So up where we are on the coast, there's a op shop village called Fairhaven. It's run by Disability Service. And we've taken a whole heap of toys that our kids have grown out of, as well as like furniture, tables, chairs, bookshelves, and so forth, and like pass them on so they can find a new home. And while we're there, you know, we'll let our kids pick out a toy as well. And sometimes they only have these toys for a week or two before we take them back, you know, and regift them, and they can pick something else. So we don't have to buy new toys. And like, my kids love the Fisher Price toys. Like, as I had these visions when I became a mum of like, you know, we would have like, you know, nice wooden blocks, and we bought all those things, and frankly, my kids don't play with them. So they like the Fisher Price stuff, but I think I have an issue with that because it's plastic, you know, so I have an issue with buying it new and a lot of it. But going to op shops, there's heaps of them there, and being able to borrow them or go into a toy library for a period of time and then it just goes back and it's part of that cycle is great. We're also part of a group which is called Central Coast Mums Paying It Forward. And we donate heaps of things from there. We also will get things from there. So like kids' shoes and jackets and all that sort of stuff we will do. I've also recently worked with a service at Mount Druitt, and they've got a lot of families that are new to Australia, lots of refugee families that are part of the service, and they're studying part of the AMEP program at TAFE where they're learning English. A lot of vulnerable families, and so we've started to establish a community room where and the faculty at the TAFE, because they're connected to the TAFE, this children's service, can donate things from crockery to linen, towels, or whatever it might be that's needed. There's a whole heap of things there that families can come in and take what they need and leave what they don't need to pass on to the next person in community. And I think getting back to this sort of idea of like your community is just an extension of your family. In our family, like, we have lots of nieces and nephews, and we're always handing things down and handing things up and moving between. And that's very much how it is in Aboriginal families and communities. And I think it should just be an extension of what we do within our early learning services as well.
Yeah, and we are seeing some of those kind of programs set up in early learning centres where they have those kind of sharing spaces. And outside of the services, what we see in some of the Bush Kindy programs is they're stopping at the street libraries, or they might be toy libraries or the community gardens, and sharing. And I think that's a great thing to be sharing with children, that, you know, they leave a book, they can take a book. So, you know, our children are always like dropping off 3, borrowing 3, and they know that they can't take, even if there's 10 awesome books in there, if we only left 3, we can only take 3, but the next week we can come back and probably borrow those ones again. So there's some amazing street libraries out there. They're quite easy to find on Google. So I, you know, really encourage those services that are heading out to Bush Kindy, tap in and find out where are your street libraries. I thought I'd share another recent story. We've just had Cyclone Alfred come and visit us on the Gold Coast, and, you know, a whole nother way of looking at kind of recycling and reinventing materials is kind of the stuff that Cyclone Alfred left behind. So in my community, everywhere, there are just piles and piles of broken down trees, all on the sides of the roads everywhere. The council can't keep up with, you know, moving them. They've moved the ones off the road or off houses, but they are just in piles. And what's happening to those? Council are slowly going around, they're collecting them, they're mulching them, and they're putting them at the council depot and filling a hole. So they're kind of not really going anywhere. This is a perfect opportunity for us to be able to recycle. And I always love Hannah's word. She always talks about nature's gifts. Like, what is nature giving us today? And, we talked about Cyclone Alfred. One of the beautiful gifts he gave us on our site is a whole lot of branches that fell down. I know yesterday in our program, it was a key part of kind of their imaginary play and their mud kitchen was with these two big branches that had fallen down. But it also gives us the opportunity to collect different leaves. We found and obviously because council come in and done some emergency work, they've used chainsaws to chop pieces up. There was a piece of a paper bark tree, a small log, that we were able to then look at all the layers of the paper bark that we typically normally wouldn't be able to look at because we're not chopping trees down. But, even in the event of a natural disaster, there are gifts there of ways to, reinvent, to recycle and upcycle nature's loose parts that are all lying around at the moment.
Such a good example. And I thought when you were telling me this before, I thought that would have been like Christmas for you. Like,
oh yeah,
bad that the trees came down. You would have gone out stuff.
Yeah. I was very excited. And I thought I'd share another one about recycling. Again, I think one of the gifts, and I keep giving examples about Bush Kindy, but one of the gifts that we get when we go to Bush Kindy is that we get to interact with the community. And along the way, wherever you go in Bush Kindy, you will come across people. And if you're consistently going to Bush Kindy on a Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, you're probably going to see same people that are walking or taking their dog out or taking the baby in the pram or and so on our sites when we go out, there's a gentleman every morning that goes and collects rubbish that we've met with. There's another gentleman that catches the bus right on time when we're arriving, and he knows a lot about all the local birds and snakes, so he's always sharing information with us. But where we were visiting, we had a lady approach us one day and she just said, "Oh, I've been watching you guys come out every week, and I'm just so excited that there's a bunch of kids outdoors and exploring and learning about nature." And she said, "So I've bought you a bundle of books that I wanted to share with you." We've now become really good friends with Joy, who lives in the house with the flag that we go and visit very regularly. And we go to her back door, and, even at the end of last year, our children gave her a Christmas gift. But what she does is she does crocheting, knitting, and makes some blankets for a local domestic violence kind of charity group. And she has lots of leftover wool. And so every couple of weeks, she gives us a bag of all the little bits of leftover wool. And then we are able to recycle that. And we have done so much craft and art, so many creative things with this wool. And because she just keeps giving it to us. And it's just, beautiful when you make those community connections, what comes about when you are out in the community, that just naturally evolves. And another time she came and visited us, and so the other thing she does is she collects old glasses for a charity, and so they get sent off to people that might need reading glasses that can't afford. And along the way, there's also glasses that get donated that they can't use, and there was a whole stack of kids' sunglasses, and so she came and donated the sunglasses to our kids. So this beautiful story of recycling just through a community connection.
Yeah, it's great. There was a community connection with me. This lady had read about some of the work that we were doing in the local paper, and through some sleuthing, I mean, I have to give it to her, like, she's in her 70s, right? So she did some quite online sleuthing. She found where I lived, and she came and she dropped off a whole heap of Aboriginal wrapping paper that she had been collecting, and like for me to be able to pass on to a preschool to recycle and to reuse and repurpose, which I thought was like lovely. I was like, and I don't know if you have anything in Queensland that's like this, but we have reverse garbage in Sydney.
Yes.
You got a reverse garbage?
Yeah, we do.
And I feel like that place is a treasure trove of, not only can you donate things there, like you can get anything from tiles to bricks to fan faces to carpet squares and buttons, zippers, mannequins, old cash registers. I feel like there's so much there. And I think those are the best resources. I used to work at the early learning services that was right next to reverse garbage. And so every break we'd go down there and have a little look, do a little cruise through and see what we could find. They also do some really great incursions. There was also a book that we used to read when I was a kid. It's an old one. I think it's called The Junkyard, but it was like these children who, like, because of all the new developments, there was nowhere left for them to play. There was no parks left for them to play. And the only place that was left was an old junkyard. And in the junkyard, there was an old oven and a tire and a car that had been bombed out and a bathtub and all different things. And they turned it into the most amazing playground of like cooking mud pies and going on ship, pirate ships and growing a garden out of the boot of the old car that was there and stuff. And I just always thought, like, that's what children love playing with. Like, that's just, like, they don't need new toys. They're happy to reuse and repurpose what's around them and being creative with what they have. I have to find the name of that book, but it's a very old one, The Junkyard. I'm sure that's what it's called.
It's like the classic example of the cardboard box, isn't it? You know, how much they want to play with that. One of our favorite things that children play with is we have a bag of fabric. It's all from the op shop. We haven't bought any of them. There's sarongs, there's tablecloths, there's just loose fabrics, different designs and different colors. It is the most used thing every single week. And, last week they had some sticks and they were building a ship. And then these cloths became the sail and the roof and then the beds in the ship. Other times it's cubby house. It's different every time. But it's a bag of cloths that probably cost less than $5 that came from the op shop. And so, we really, if we make an effort, we don't have to be spending lots of money, big budgets, and getting all these commercial products. We can use what's just out there before it all hits the waste.
I think I remember even as a kid, my mum had like a glass, like Makona coffee jar just full of buttons that, just from, like the little ones that come on your shirts and things like that, just all different odd bits and bobs of buttons. And we used to sit there and just play with them, look at them, examine them. They would treasure, line them up, pattern them. And she also had a jar of keys. Like, I don't know where these keys came from, but we love playing with those as well. So I think there's so much in recycling. I feel like typically out of those 7 R's, I would probably think that recycling is the thing that most services do the best. Would you think that too?
Yeah, I agree. Because I think particularly all those recycled plastic materials that we often have, they get recycled into play and learning a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that's the end of our episode 2 of our podcast, Educator Yarns. Thanks, Bec, for joining me. And in our next episode, we are going to be talking about bush tucker gardens, and particularly bush tucker gardens or gardens in general that die, and the message that sends to children and ways that we can intentionally create our gardens from beginning or find out about them and use these plants intentionally in our program. So we're echoing those messages of custodianship and caring for country with children. Thanks for joining me, Bec.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. To find out more information about the Koori curriculum and how we can best support you in your early learning service, visit www.kooricurriculum.com.